thank you very much for the invitation, and I'd like to say how much I've enjoyed listening to various contributions, both yesterday and, of course, primarily this morning. I'm going to give you a quick run-through of cryptocurrencies, starting with Bitcoin, which, of course, is the one that you have all heard about, and you see those lovely, pretty gold coins when you read about it in the newspapers. Of course, you never get the pretty gold coin. It's a marketing tool, because who would want to buy a string of numbers on the internet? Can you imagine trying to sell that? Much longer than you can possibly remember. Bitcoin is really a gamble. It has no intrinsic value whatsoever, except for criminals and terrorists who use it for their own ends, and for others who dream of becoming a millionaire overnight. Dreams which are too often shattered as the value of Bitcoin rises and falls each day, and even within a day. That means that although it was first intended to be a currency, it cannot operate as a currency. It is far too volatile for that. Reflecting on that, others looked at the field and decided to introduce stable coins. But remember that the stability that the stable coins offer have only two aspects to it. Unlike Bitcoins, they are not volatile. But, and this is how I like to describe stable coins, they are parasites. Their stability depends only on being a one-to-one peg, allegedly, with certain leading currencies: the dollar, the pound, the euro, the yen. They do not choose to relate themselves to act as pegs for others much more volatile currencies. What is interesting about this market is how quickly it has declined. The total crypto market that people were getting so worried about last year, as it seemed to be continually rising, the total market capitalization of all cryptos was roughly $3 trillion. Now, today, I just checked the figures today, the total market capitalization is $1.05 trillion, a third of what it was last year. The total stable coin market, there are about 200 stable coins, most of them you wouldn't bother with or you wouldn't even have heard of. There are the top 10, and I want to talk about one of those in particular. The total stable coin market has fallen to $138.4 billion. As of January this year. Those were the latest figures I could find. So why? Well, I think there are various reasons for that, one of which is the total lack of transparency. Tether, which is the top stable coin, it is now roughly 67% of the market cap of all the stable coins. Tether is located in the British Virgin Islands, and that is, of course, a British overseas territory. And I'm sorry to say that it almost came under direct rule from the British government a few months ago because it was so corrupt. Tether is headquartered there and is registered as a company in the normal companies register. It is not registered as a virtual or crypto asset service provider. The British Virgin Islands, which is seeking to emerge from its near collapse into corruption, or through corruption, recently introduced legislation requiring all such service providers to be licensed by the British Virgin Islands Financial Services Authority. They were supposed to have completed that by July the 31st. Tether is still not on that register. It should be, but it isn't. Instead, Tether, which of course has been fined twice by the US, the New York Federal Financial Services Department imposed heavy fines a few years ago, and also so did the CFTC, but I think I'll leave my colleague to talk about that since he was formerly a commissioner there. So why would I want transparency? Well, so would you if you were a customer. First of all, you would like to know that you have to buy Tether using, say, your US dollars. How much does that cost? And then you want to send your Tethers to someone in another country. You want an international transfer. What are the fees for that? Are they published? Are the fees always the same? No, they're not always the same, because Tether uses one of the many networks. Primarily, it uses the Ethereum network. That's just another name for a blockchain. And often, Ethereum, which is the most used blockchain, gets congested. So that slows down, and the more the transfers slow down, the higher the fees become. But you don't know that. And then, of course, your recipient of the monies may also have to pay a fee. You don't know how much they're going to be charged, because none of that is transparent. Of course, this also means that although Tether may sound as though it is, well, it's pegged to the US dollar, it is stable, but it is, of course, also used, because the same pseudonymity rules apply, it is also used by criminals to transfer money through money laundering, just as Bitcoin is used in exactly the same way, exactly the same procedure. So don't forget that stablecoins are not as innocent as they might appear. And the second point to remember is you don't know whether or not you're going to get your money back. No one tells you what the procedures are to get your money back, so you may pay, let's say, $1,000. Are you going to get $1,000 back anytime you fancy getting your $1,000 back? Well, currently, you may not, because instead of trading at 1-to-1 for most of August, and I looked again at it last night and this morning, it's been trading at 0.99. So that means that you wouldn't get your $1,000 back, but maybe less 5%. But none of that is clear to you, because it has not been regulated adequately until the European Union, with its markets in crypto assets legislation, was finally agreed. It is legislative procedure is rather slow in the European Union. It has taken about 3 years to finally come into existence and to begin enforcement. Final version came into force in June this year, after long discussions and also long consultations about it, which is a good process to have. I looked at the main headings of the markets in crypto assets legislation. There's one thing that I think it would be extremely important to add, and this is a point I've made more than once. Its website. What should it say on its website? First of all, it only published what's called an attestation of its reserves. That is not a proper audit. You do not get to see profit and loss accounts. Instead, Tether announces that it made 1.5 billion profits this year. Well, I'd really like to know how they made that much money in 3 months. Might try it myself, but that's unlikely. So total transparency. What are your reserves? Where are they? At the moment, the circulating supply is about 82.3 billion tethers. $82.3 billion that should be. If it was located in America, it would be one of the top banks in America. But where is the money? We don't know. It is rumoured that Cantor Fitzgerald manages about 40% of those reserves. But do they? They don't say. Those are just market rumours. We don't know where the money is. And indeed, the attestations are interesting. The director of finance for Tether lives in Milan. The selection for the company and the person who signed the attestation is BDO Italia, and the signatory also lives in Milan. I don't know what the relationship is, so I can't say any more whatsoever about that. But the procedures for redemption, are there any fees involved? That's what you should know. The fees should also be published. All of that I'd like to see on the website. If you have a complaint, who do you complain to? How do you go about it? That should be on the website as well. It isn't. So for me, why bother to buy tethers? People are told that this is inclusive and is a cheap way of transferring money. Well, follow the UK in this matter in two ways. First of all, make it a legal obligation to supply a basic bank account to everybody who needs it and wants it, and no discrimination at all in the provision of such a basic bank account. Secondly, encourage the development of speedy, efficient, and low-cost transfers for remittances. Do those two things, and you will be well on your way towards defeating these parasites of stable coins. They would have no value unless they were pegged to a leading currency at all. And the last point I want to say about this, because obviously I've been extremely skeptical about cryptos, but not about the technology. The technology can be used, blockchain technology can be used for other purposes, and indeed it can actually be used not to foster crime, but to prevent crime. So always separate the technology from the many current uses in the financial sector of that technology. So there is hope for the technology, no hope, I hope, for stable coins. Thank you very much.